Welcome to the Leadership Collective podcast, the show where we explore strategies, insights, and tools that drive growth and leadership success. I'm Jennie Mead, your host for today's conversation. After years of leading HR, people and culture across diverse organisations, I now work as an executive coach, board advisor, and fractional chief people officer, helping leaders and their teams navigate growth, change, and the complexities of scaling businesses. This episode is part of our special series From Startup to Scale Up, where we focus on critical steps founders, CEOs, and leadership teams need to take as they grow their organisation. In this series, we've covered everything from validating ideas and securing funding to building scalable teams and avoiding the pitfalls of rapid growth. Today, we're zeroing in on one of the most critical moments in a startup's journey, pitching to investors and securing funding in Series A and B rounds. I'm thrilled to welcome Ryan McCary as a seasoned investor with years of experience guiding and funding high-growth startups. Together, we'll unpack the common mistakes leaders make during investor pitches, the red flags that can derail funding opportunities, and what happens after the deal is closed. We'll also explore how founders and leadership teams can cultivate strong collaborative relationships with their investors to drive long-term success. But first, let me introduce you to Ryan. Ryan is an investor and non-exec of several businesses based primarily in the UK, but also in the US and Belize. That's an interesting place. He was founder of a tech business that was sold to a US corporation and has an extensive background in internet, data center, cloud, commercial property, and the drink sector. He has been involved with disruptive technologies, transforming organizations and building businesses from founder, startup, and growth stages to private equity and PLC, public limited companies. Recent exits include selling IT services group Concepta Capital to Iomark PLC and selling of a non-alcoholic brewery, Mashgang, to US private equity investors Invus. So welcome, Ryan. It's great to have you here. Thank you very much for joining us today.
Thank you, Jenny. Thank you for the kind introduction.
Well, we're excited to have you because throughout our series, we've had lots of conversations around how founders and founder CEOs and CFOs can gear up to that important part of their process of speaking to investors and really getting them to buy into what they're trying to do. So it's great to have you here. And I'm going to start with our very first question, which I'm sure is on the minds of everybody listening to this, is what are the biggest mistakes from your perspective that founders make during their pitch that immediately turn investors off?
Sure. Okay. I think that probably the first one would be not being honest. So make sure that you're being authentic. I think that's probably the best advice I can give you. Faking it or blagging it is a no-no. Don't do it. It'll definitely come out. You'll be able to tell. And I think that sort of is very telling very quickly if somebody's making it up on the spot and they're not being authentic again. I don't expect everybody to know all the answers, but I guess I do expect the basics like telling the truth, knowing the problems your product solves, knowing the addressable market, and the customer profile and product fit of what you're doing, what your business offers. So really, you should know the business inside out and be able to answer those questions that people are asking you on that first call. Presumably, you've done an IM already, so you would have sent that and would have put a little bit of heart and soul into that IM. You would have practiced this a little bit. And I think then it's just about delivering that to the person in front of you or people in front of you. To run a successful business, you have to understand the numbers. So make sure you know those backwards. And I'd probably say make sure you practiced your pitch. Really important. Make sure you've done it a few times. Practice it in the mirror. Practice it to people in the family. There's a saying that I sometimes trot out which says an amateur practices until they get it right and a professional practices until they can't get it wrong. So make sure you can't get it wrong. That's probably fundamental to what you're doing. You've got plenty of time to practice that before you get up in front of somebody or indeed do a call like this on a Teams call or Google Meet, whatever that might be. So you need to establish trust very quickly with the people in front of you or the person that you're trying to get the investment from. So that, doing that in a short amount of time means you need to be quite compelling and also very clear and concise when you're talking to them. So over a few short meetings, really, you've got to try and convince an investor that you can be trusted with a significant amount of cash, no surprises, no drama, and be authentic.
I think that's a really good word, authentic. And authenticity is something that comes up a lot when certainly I'm coaching leaders as well. Earlier on in a series, we talked about using our peers and our network to actually help us when we're building our business. And I think you've raised a really good point to actually practice and use that network, whether it be family or your professional network. I think that's a really good takeaway. You've started talking about some of the qualities and traits with being authentic and establishing that trust at an early stage. So, following on from that and kind of taking that theme, what are the qualities that you are looking for or traits in founders, not just in founders, but their teams as well, when you're deciding to invest?
Yeah, it's a good question, that, because everybody's going to be looking for something different. So I can only speak personally what I'm looking for. Obviously, there's going to be different criteria different investors are looking for. I guess the standard stuff like passion, knowledge, you want somebody driven, they have to be excited about what they're doing. You're going to be an expert at what you do and your business and your industry, because you wouldn't be doing this if you weren't. So that's very important. I think what's really important to me is kindness. I think that is quite a big thing for me. Great leaders, in my opinion, are kind. They nurture, they develop, they grow the people around them. They have to get the best out of the people around them, and that kind of can be summed up in kindness, I think, as well. They care about what they're doing in their teams. So that for me is quite a key word, and something to remember. When you go into these pitches, don't be scared. People are looking for some of these things. So be kind, demonstrate that it's not a weakness, it's a strength. I think that's definitely one thing. With these things, what's really important is that an investor has to like you, and you have to like them. So you need to kind of establish that, like I said previously, very quickly or early on. So relax, be comfortable, and authentic will help you do that. Being sincere is obviously kind of key to both of those things. You've got to learn to live with these people for the next few years. So make sure that you're going into this relationship from the off, the right way, on the right foot. You're going to spend years working with them quite closely. So make sure you get on and you like them. You really want to try and be friends at the end of it. That's what I aim to do with all of my investment. It's important that we become and we stay friends. Good people work with good people, so you might work with them again. That's pretty common. That's certainly true of what I've done with people I've worked with. I've invested in some of them later on in life. So make sure you leave those relationships in a good way as well. You're going to get some difficult times together. So you're going to be definitely stress tested, some serious challenges together. So make sure that you're going into that relationship with somebody you can trust. It's going to be a high pressure environment that both of you are potentially working together in. And you need to be able to cope calmly with that, and vice versa. Choose somebody you think will be calm and collected and give you the advice you want and that you want to be around. I remember the first meeting I had with Mashka, and we just kind of laughed and giggled the whole way through it. It was really relaxed. Didn't really talk that much about the business. It was more understanding them understanding me, being comfortable, and we talked, about lots of random stuff. So it's not always kind of a numbers driven conversation. I think sometimes it can be quite relaxed and open, and you need to enjoy it. Be relaxed, be authentic, be sincere, and test those first early relationship.
I think you've raised a really good point, because something like kindness is a value that somebody might have. And actually, what you're saying is I think what you're saying, and you can disagree if I've got this wrong, but what you're saying is actually really understand what your values are as a founder. And then are you then looking for the same values in the investor? And I think if you marry those up, you'll end up with a better starting point from a relationship perspective to then actually do the business side of it.
Absolutely. Yeah, I totally agree with that, Jay. I think it's a really good one. You probably said it much better than I did. But, it is that. It is matching up with the right person. And you might need to go through sort of 10 or 12 conversations to find that out. I think that, it's not going to be the first meeting you have. I guess that's an opportunity to practice your pitch as well when you're going through those. So assume it won't be, the first meeting you have will be the investor that you want.
Yeah, I think that's good. And actually, that's a good point to make. The first meeting you have may not be where you end up in terms of who you're going to be then working with. And I don't think a lot of, maybe it might be something for us to think about in this series, but actually, how can we support founders actually think about their brand from a values-based perspective so that they're incorporating that into the investment process, which actually leads me on to my next question around the investment process. So, there's some really good nuggets so far already that you're getting our listeners to think about. But taking the whole investment process now, how would you say that founders can best prepare to go through that process?
Another good question. Yeah, I think an investment process is hard. Don't underestimate it. You are going to have a lot of work to do on top of an already probably very busy schedule. So I sometimes say the investment process is designed to break you. That's almost how you should approach it. There's a lot to work through. If you imagine, just ticking off through some of the things that you're going to have to do before you actually sign a bit of paper to get money paid into the bank, you're going to need to put a pitch deck or IM together. That's probably the first place to start. Then you're potentially going to do dozens of pitches and presentations to various different people. Some of them scary, some of them not scary. You're going to negotiate some of those values with investors along the way. You might have one that you want more than the others, or there might be one that's a better deal for you. So that's going to need some consideration, and it'll need time to do that. And then when you have actually chosen somebody and you have agreed a deal, then you've got to get through the legals and the DD that follow that kind of initial agreement. So you're going to agree a share purchase agreement, the SPA. That's probably the fundamental document, one of them, or an investment agreement, depending on who's investing in your business. There'll be one of the two, probably. You'll also need then to add them to your shareholders agreement or agree a new one. And then you're going to need to do things like director service agreements, how the dividends are going to be spent, if there are any ever paid out in the next 3 years. You're going to need to do things like non-exec director letters, NED letters, which you may want your NED to get involved in the business. It's obviously quite an important part for me because I'm quite hands-on when I make an investment. So there's quite a lot there that you'll need to negotiate and get through, all of which takes a bit of time, and potentially you'll need help with others to put that together. So all of those things add up to quite a lot of negotiation, a bit of stress, a bit of time. So you're going to need to make sure you're in the right headspace to do it, which isn't easy for me to say when, I can say that quite easily, but it's difficult when you're running a demanding business in the background, or that's certainly front and center. So I would say for starters, make sure you have a really good business case and investment deck. That is fundamental to everything we're doing. You're going to put numbers in there, so it is difficult to predict growth and numbers too little, and the risk losing an investor as the return isn't compelling enough, but too much and you look like you're overcooking it and a bit of a dreamer. So like Goldilocks, you need to make sure you get it just right. But ultimately, I invest in people, and getting was really important. So a lot of that stuff, the negotiation piece, all the legal stuff, will probably work through in the background without too much drama. I think that's probably some of the best advice I can give is just give it a bit of time. And rarely does anything go to plan in these things. We all know that as in life. So important things are adaptability and change, big important things to remember, and expect the unexpected.
That's good advice. Expect the unexpected, and you kind of learn that over time, don't you, with experience, that sort of thing. And as you were speaking, I'm thinking, gosh, if I was now a founder, and I coach a founder who's about 20, 21, 22, I can't remember off the top of my head exactly how old he is, but very, very early on in his career from an age perspective, and to then be sort of listed with all these things that he needs to be thinking about as he goes through that process. My thought then goes to, who should he be surrounding himself with? So how can founders actually ensure a really successful outcome to that process that you've just described? Both from a process for the investment, but also bringing on the right investor for them. When they've never been through anything like that before, they may not be surrounded by people who've had that experience. So in their own network. So who should they be looking for, and what should they be doing?
My advice here would be get a good team of people around you, specialists and advisors. So this will need a bit of work done before the process. Build and cultivate this over the year or two leading up to the investment that you want. You probably need to get out, have lots of conversations with people, and go to lots of events, ask for recommendations for people you know. I think probably primary thing, the first thing you want to do is make sure you've got some really good lawyers. They will earn their money, definitely. Finding a good one is key. They're gold. They will help you. They will save you a lot of money in the future, and it will make the process of getting that investment a lot easier because the legal process will be concise, quick, and simple to do. So getting a good lawyer to translate that is vital, I would say, probably number one. Hopefully you've got an accountant or you've got somebody that can help you with the finances and putting some of that together. So make sure you've got a strong accountant on your side in your team. And, if you are looking for some of the bigger investments, then I would definitely suggest talking to corporate advisors. So speak to some corporate finance advisors. They're really good. There's some good ones out there. You don't necessarily need to go to the big four. There's lots of regional ones, lots of national ones that you will be able to afford. So speak to some of them and meet them and discuss your business with them. Lastly, probably a tax advisor or tax specialist. Increasingly, a lot of the things that we do these days are, tax related. So that seems to be taking up a lot of my time more and more over the years. So it's good having one of those on your corner as well. Ultimately, what I'm saying is build great ecosystems. That is key to what you are putting together for this investment process. Lastly, I would say the people that you want to talk to, they're looking for you. So you are their future customer. And if you're successful, they get work. So they will want to talk to you. Don't be scared. Go and meet them.
A couple of good points there as well. And just to mention that one of the series in our podcast is I speak to a CFO, particularly around actually what they would be expecting to see through this process as well. So if that point around a good accountant, somebody knows what they're talking about, then for our listeners to just refer back to that. And actually, you make a good point about the good lawyers get a good lawyer. And I can only look at it from a commercial and employment law perspective. But what I look for in a good lawyer is somebody that I feel like, again, I've got the relationship with, I can be absolutely open with in terms of, and not be able to ask questions that may come across as silly questions. But for that lawyer to actually take the advice that they're giving in and deliver it to you in a very pragmatic way is really important, so they can break it down and actually say, do you know what, this is the risk here, but practically speaking, then give you some ideas of what to do. Because often or not, you might have a lawyer that just gives you a very long-winded written and then actually can't help you kind of decipher it. So there's some getting a good lawyer is some really good advice. So kind of I'm going to turn the questions slightly now, and actually I'm going to look at it from your perspective as to what are the red flags that you've seen a founder or a leadership team may display if they are not ready for investment? Because we talk about timing in other parts of this podcast series and being ready for investment. But from your perspective, what are you looking for as those red flags?
Not being able to listen or taking criticism is something that does definitely give me a red flag or puts me off. I think my view is very much to let people speak and be kind as part of that, and listening is an important part of that relationship for an investor. I think that's a big deal. So other things that might be a red flag are things that you will spot, like shareholder disagreements. If there's a fallout between shareholders, nobody really wants to walk into that. So resolve those before you go into an investment process. I think anything with a leadership team, if there's any kind of issues that you pick up, people being disgruntled, not happy, or not feeling they're part of that sort of process or that journey, that unhappiness will probably come out fairly quickly from some of the conversations, or certainly the ones afterwards that you're going to be testing when you do some due diligence. Same with internal disputes, with any staff or what that looks like. That can sometimes be a red flag for an investor. Easy ones like customer churn, picking that out is going to be quick and easy to do from the numbers. So unhappy customers are not necessarily great from an investor's point of view. You want to see lots of happy customers and testimonials, and retention rates need to be good. If you ever see employees complaining in any way, or that might be online as well. There's some handy tools which you'll know as working in HR like Glassdoor. Some of these things give you a bit of an insight into the business and can tell you quite quickly. So those are a few of the simple things that you might be looking for as an investor doing a bit of testing or due diligence on the business. Not hitting the forecasts is obviously a big red flag. If you say you're going to do the numbers, kind of hit them. It's an important component of what we do. So we need to be able to trust you that the numbers that you're presenting are achievable. So if there's any disarray in the numbers, then that is an issue. And certainly when you're running the process as well, you'll be tracking the numbers. So you'll get a chance, an opportunity to make sure that those forecasts are tested. There's I think it's, sometimes I say the reaction to that is disproportionate. So missing those targets is disproportionate to the actual response that an investor might have to that business. And what I'm ultimately looking for is a strong leadership team that's driven, that's aligned, that's focused on the journey together and all pointing in the right direction. So for me, I would be advising founders to try and remove all those distractions and address them before you run a process.
Yeah, that's a really good point as well. And you mentioned earlier on in the previous question, actually not, when you're doing the financials and you're putting the business plan together and getting the right forecasts and everything in place, you don't want to undercook them and you don't want to over egg them. Would it be fair to say that there could be a time where you're in a process and they're just not ready for investment, but you actually believe in what they're trying to do, and it may be that there's just some experience that they need to go through in order to make their pitch and them ready? Is that fair to say that you might actually then wait and keep yourself close to them, or even kind of try and coach them?
Yeah, I think so. I definitely think finding the right time to do it is important, certainly in that business journey. So if you're not right, delay it and have the conversations and push it back. I think that's really important, is to kind of manage that process with your investors and set their expectations, definitely, to say, we've really enjoyed that conversation. It's been very good. You're potentially a really good match for me and my business, but now's not the right time. That is almost better than doing it too soon and getting it wrong. I would say delaying it is much better for everybody, because what will happen is the process will collapse, and then you've got this untangling this complicated mess of stuff, and potentially you've burnt a great relationship or a great investor that might have been really good for you in 6 to 12 months' time. So don't be afraid if you can. Obviously businesses need that money, but if you can do that, I'd suggest it's a good thing to do.
And it could be that you actually ask that question, couldn't it, in the pitch, to say, actually, do you think you're ready for this? And so it kind of brings me on to my next question about, that's a tough question to answer. And so from your perspective, how do you recommend that those in the pitch, so founders and anyone else that may be with them, supporting that pitch, how do they handle tough questions about risks or challenges to their business model without undermining their own confidence in their ability, and, to your point earlier on, keeping that relationship open for potential opportunity?
I think to answer that, it's probably best to be brutally honest with the people you're talking to, or the investor that you're having those conversations with. Certainly don't sugarcoat any challenges or problems, and be quite direct in the way that you engage with them and talk with them. So be quick to share if there are any issues. If you have any bad news, go into it in detail. That's something you should probably just shine a light on it and don't shy away from it. So things like the numbers are poor, explain why. Why did sales struggle? Provide the reason. Some of those things are quite simple to do and can be worked through easily if you're honest and open about it. So this is a chance for you to show you're the expert, and a chance to show, use it, take it. Um, keep it simple. That's probably the easiest thing to advise here, and pitch with clarity, and try and remove jargon wherever you can. So it's easy to digest and understand.
That's really helpful. And before we move on, I do want to spend some time shortly looking after what that post-investment collaboration looks like. But I've got one more question for you in this part of the podcast is and that is, have you seen or are there any unconventional approaches to pitching that you've actually seen work well, or on the flip side, completely fail, like spectacular failure?
I've seen quite a range of pictures. Obviously, I must have received hundreds of IM decks and slides. So I have seen a real broad portfolio of work over the years. But the ones that really stand out for me are obviously going to be something that is different, that's going to be bold and brave. So if you can do that, that is what you should be doing with your slide deck and the way that you present yourself. You do need to stand out because it's so noisy, and there are so many people that are wanting to get investment. So private equity firms are inundated with IMs every day. They get hundreds and hundreds every week. So yours will need to be something different. Easy for me to say again, difficult to do, but you're going to have to work that out. If you can find a different path, there are various ways that you can talk to investors, rather than just submitting them through some of the websites that you might find. So things like speaking to your lawyers, who are very good at making introductions to their customers, their clients, their investors, and their clients that they work with. That is one way to potentially get an introduction. Your accountants, perhaps you do go back to those corporate advisors and speak to them. Your network of people, your friends, your family, everybody you know in business. So there's lots of different ways to get to the people that you want to talk to. Everyone is approachable, so you can talk to these people. It is easy to do. You just have to find a way or make one. I think there are numerous ways to do that you will probably navigate as you're putting this process together. If you build something compelling and investment worthy, the rest will take care of itself. You will find people want to come and talk to you. If you have a real good, clear idea of what you want to achieve, where your business is going, and how you are conducting yourself, I think people will find you also.
Be bold and be brave. And I think you mentioned earlier on is to get out there and get to, in an earlier question, get out there and get to events and go on. And actually, it reminds me of somebody that I know who has started her own business. And actually, she met one of her investors, sat next to somebody at a university event, and they're in. It was just like the universe kind of made it happen for her. So that's really good advice. Okay, I'm gonna flip now. So everything's all gone well. The investment has happened. You've kind of gone through the processes that needed to go through. Once the company secures that funding, what do you think are the most common mistakes that leaders make afterwards and when first working with their investors?
I think not spending all the money on day one is a really good thing not to do. Try to avoid that if you can. Let it rest in the bank a little. That's probably a bit of advice I can tell you. Things like that do make investors very nervous straight away. So I would just take a little bit of a pause when you've got the investment and the money has hit your account. Spend it slowly and spend it as though it's your money. That's an important way to treat the cash that you've got in the business to fund what you both agreed to do. Don't suddenly change everything you're going to do. That is usually a red flag, I think, for an investor. So not doing what you say you're going to do will be some cause of conflict potentially with your newfound investor, and you don't want to do that. I think it comes down to doing what you say you were going to do.
Yeah, and I think, and it's interesting actually because in another episode of this series, we actually speak to a founder and hear from them the the moment when they have the money in the bank and they go, oh, what do I do now? And there's almost a chance that you can panic, right, into actually, to your point, actually thinking you've got to spend it without actually really thinking about it. So, and it's good to hear from your perspective as an investor that you want people to take the time to actually make the right decisions and spend it like it's their money. I think that's a really good point.
Yeah, and I think during that process, Jenny, over communicating and over communicating again is fundamental to making sure that relationship gets off to a good start. So make sure you do spend time with the people that you've just brought into your business or the investor that you're taking money from. Getting that relationship off to a good start and getting the balance right is fundamental to the next 3 to 5 years that you're potentially going to be working together if everything goes to plan. So managing those investor expectations is potentially a little bit of, you need to do a lot of work in that regard. I think factor in some time for doing that as part of that initial campaign of work post-investment.
And that important point around investor expectations and things. So I now am going to flip that slightly onto what advice would you give a founder who is struggling to decide between multiple investors who may have differing visions for the business?
Yeah, I really like this question. I think it's a good one because you have got a choice. Thankfully, that you can get to a point where you do have a few people that want to invest your business, and you've got the luxury of choosing who you want to work with. So I think there's probably a few questions I can ask to say, what in this scenario, this might help you decide. So who would you feel comfortable phoning at 1 a.m. if something went wrong, you had a problem, when you talk about it? That's quite a good question potentially to ask yourself when you're deciding. Who would you be happy spending a 12-hour flight sat next to? So, you're going to spend quite a lot of time with this person. It's going to be a number of years that we're working together. You've got to get on. So that might be one sort of qualifying question that I would ask. You're going to have a cauldron of challenges together. That's make sure you're comfortable being in hot water. And you think you can trust the person that you're bringing into your business. If you're not sure, or if you're absolutely not sure, don't do it. I think that's probably the best advice. You have to be really sure about this and get it right. It's difficult to undo it once you've done it. So all those things that I talked about, you're going to need to do this volume of work, spend a bit of money on it. You need to make sure you're getting it right from the start. So how do they respond when things go wrong? How do they deal with adversity? Would you call them first when you had a problem? I think those are some of the questions you should be asking yourself. People are very different to what works for you. Personally, I think I work best when everything's on fire. And that's kind of when I do my best work, but that's not necessarily what other people are like, and it might not work for them. So everybody's different. Work out what's right for you.
Yeah, that's really good advice. And my last question, so we've kind of really you've given us some really good nuggets in this, and we've kind of looked at it from how can we help the founder get through this investor process and into a nice sort of cadence and rhythm working with their investor going forward. I want to now ask you from your perspective, as an investor, what do you wish that founders knew about actually the pressure that goes on to you as an investor in the decision-making process to invest in a business? What's going through your mind?
There's not that much pressure on investors, really. It's not that difficult. I think one of the things I would suggest, certainly not compared to a founder anyway, one of the things I would say is be patient with the people you're talking to or the investor that you're trying to encourage into your business. It's not always a quick decision, so that sometimes takes a while to understand the business and get a feel for it and come round to it. There's probably a bit of due diligence that he may need to do on your business. Think about it, and kind of come to a decision that means you are going to put significant amounts of money into this person, because that's ultimately what you are doing. There's different considerations for private equity versus an angel investor like someone like me. So private equity will have a huge amount of of hurdles and hoops to jump through. There are some committees that do business cases, that have to present it. They may only meet once a month, perhaps, so timings might be delayed or staggered if you're hitting that process, and they'll need multiple rounds of sign-off before they actually part with any money. Angel investors may be a little bit simpler, but they're still going to want to do some of those processes that they know private equity do. So some of those processes can be quite lengthy. It takes a bit of time. Potentially, we're going to need to speak to specialists in that sector and get some advice and consider it. And that takes a bit of time to get through. Occasionally, money can be tied up in different areas. So sometimes unraveling that, bringing it back, cashing in, getting it in the bank before they invest is a little bit of a delay there as well. So those are some of the things that I would probably suggest we think about, that we will need to consider as an investor. But the benefits for both are great. You know, angel investors are often founders who have been there, done that before, and we can offer some good advice and help you get where you need to get. Ultimately, we're investing for success. We expect a return. What that is kind of, individual to every investor, but it's not just financial value that you're getting when you bring somebody into the business.
And you can certainly hear that in the way you describe certainly your experience as an investor. You can hear that advisory stuff is again something that founders should absolutely consider and listen to. And feedback is a gift, right? And actually, the more feedback that a founder and the leadership team can get, the more they're likely to succeed. And I think it's nice for you to hear that, and to reaffirm that actually you want them to succeed, because actually that's going to make it a good investment. So, well, thank you, Ryan, for joining us. That does wrap up today's conversation. A huge thank you to you, Ryan, for sharing such valuable insights on preparing for investor pitches, avoiding those common pitfalls, and building strong relationships with investors after securing funding. I think that's a really important point that you've made today. If you found this discussion helpful and want to continue growing as a leader, I encourage you to check out the Leadership Collective. They're dedicated to empowering leaders to thrive in today's ever-changing business landscape. You can learn more about their work and how to get involved by visiting theleadershipcollective.global. Thank you for tuning in to the Leadership Collective podcast. I'm Jennie Mead, and we'll see you next time. Until then, keep challenging yourself, driving impact, and leading with purpose. Thanks very much.